Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. Today's interview is part 3 of a 3-part interview we did with Artimus Pyle, drummer with Leonard Skinner. In this interview, Artimus really goes into detail about the plane crash in October 20th, 1977 that changed music history with Leonard Skinner. He also talks about the future with him and his new band and what they're doing now. Hope you enjoy it. If you do, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Once again, part 3, Artimus Pyle. Welcome back to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage with Artimus Pyle. So Artimus, you're in the plane coming from Greenville. When did things start going south? What was happening, and then when did you know it was?
Things went south before then, Joe. And that's why we in the band were talking about getting a Learjet so that the band could have 45 minutes in the air. Our flights were 2 hours. And, we wanted to cut that down. So we were going to buy 2 new tour buses, one for the crew and let them design the floor plan and be comfortable, follow the equipment. Makes sense. One for the girls, our backup singers, because we used to not be able to afford, the girls. And I'd sing backup with Ronnie on Sweet Home Alabama. I can't believe that. I'm saying that, but Ronnie asked for me to sing backup with him on Sweet Home Alabama when the girls weren't there. But we were going to get and Leon sang backup too, a tour bus for the girls so that nobody could get them, because the road crew was always trying to get the girls. And that was the plan, get us a Learjet. That was just before we crashed. We didn't have time to do it. Get rid of that old plane. We had Jerry Lee Lewis's airplane, which was a Rolls-Royce powered turboprop, which I flew it. Les Long would let me, I'd slide in, if the co-pilot would get out, I'd slide in. Les would make sure that I wasn't drunk, which I wasn't. And he'd let me just, feel the wheel because I flew in the Marines backseat, fighter bombers. And I love it. So I was always, going up in the cockpit trying to, get some seat time. Mm-hmm. And we got rid of that plane and got the Convair that we crashed, which was a much lesser plane. It was red, white, and blue. They painted Leonard Skinner across the nose. So we went, okay, it's our plane. But it wasn't a good plane. It had a Pratt & Whitney engine. It had problems, and we crashed it. And we were going, that was the plan. So it was shooting flames. We were going to have a mechanic from Falcon Airways in Dallas, Texas, meet us in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and check the plane out. And then Cassie wanted to fly commercial. Alan wanted to fly commercial. They had tickets from Greenville to Louisiana. But in the end, everybody just got on the plane. We were so thankful to have gigs and have a tour and have success. I was. And I know Ronnie felt the same way. One night in Germany, I listened to the entire Pronounced, that's Bob Burns, album. And I tapped Ronnie on the shoulder and I said, Ronnie, this is a beautiful album, man. And he said, it's my masterpiece. So we were making big plans, and we were going to get rid of that old plane and get a Learjet, and our flight time would be much less. Mm-hmm. And he knew his destiny. Ronnie told me in Tokyo, Japan, that he would not live to see 30. I've said this before in interviews, and that he would go out with his boots on, which for a musician means on the road. So we were thankful to have these gigs, and Ronnie's thing was, you know, when it's your time, it's your time. And there's a lot to be said for that, you know. We're not guaranteed anything. So that everybody got on the plane. And then the right engine was shooting out big black flames. And we were idiots. You know, we should have gone, no. Nowadays, somebody would have stepped in, you know, but the pilots did not put a stick. Any pilot will tell you, any good pilot. You take a wooden stick and you put it down in your tank, and you visually look at how much fuel you have. Mm-hmm. You don't trust the gauges on a 1947 Convair. Jerry Lee Lewis's plane, we got his pilot and his plane, was a 48. I was born in 48. I'm okay. You know, I'm fine. So that plane was fine to me. When we went to the 47, you know, that plane was older than me. And so you don't trust those gauges. They did. They made a mistake. They paid for it. Our pilot and co-pilot paid for it with their life. And I never hated them because they didn't want to die. Their families didn't want to lose but they screwed up bad, man. They made some mistakes. And every plane crash is a series of mistakes. There's one catastrophic thing. And, you know, my father was killed in a plane crash. I've been in 3 airplane crashes. There's always a reason, and these guys made the mistakes. But at the moment we realized that we were a glider, that both engines were gone, and I was going back and forth to the cockpit because I'm a pilot, and I wanted to know what was going on. I wanted to tell everybody, you know, to take care, beware. You know, we're kind of going down here, and at that point is when I realized in the movie that I did with Cleopatra Films, and my band wrote a beautiful song for the soundtrack, Street Survivor. It's called Street Survivors, The True Story of the Leonard Skinner Plane Crash. Mm-hmm. It's very straightforward. It's intense. It's not for children. There's nudity. There's bad language. You know, there's drugs. But that's kind of the way it was. And in that, it shows some anger because the pilot, and there was anger, but nobody on the plane was yelling, help me, you know. Everybody was cool and saying their prayers and accepting what was happening. Nobody was freaking out, but Leon got pretty mad at our co-pilot and Billy and Leon. Leon, you know, said a couple of expletives when our co-pilot came out and said, all right, we're going to try to land. And he said this, John Gray, he said, we're going to try to land on the interstate or a field. So if you're landing in a field, you don't want your landing gear down because it'll trip you. Mm-hmm. It's soft. Mm-hmm. If you're landing on the interstate, you want your landing gear down and locked. You know, we had tricycle landing gear on that thing, one on the nose, and we were right next to I-55. So, okay, let's land on the interstate, you know. But we didn't make it over the trees. Our glide ratio was down. We didn't make it, and it tripped us. And so when Leon heard that, and a couple other people were like, you know, what do you mean? But, you know, some anger came out. But really, the plane, the cabin was quiet. People were in prayer. And I never once lost consciousness, and I never thought that I would die. My life didn't flash before me. So I'm a survivor, and I just was thinking, this is a rough ride, and it's going to stop, and then I'm going to get out. And that's exactly what happened. I went back into the crash to get a guy that was pinned, and he was needing help. So I went back up in there thinking it was going to burst into flames because you think you're carrying fuel. Mm-hmm. But we ran out of fuel. Now, on a tour bus, right? You just coast to the side of the road and call AAA. But we had a terrible crash, and it was, 6 people were killed on impact, but 19 people lived, which is unheard of, because the plane was torn to pieces, and 19 people lived. So it was. You ask me about that moment when we realized that we were going down, and there was some anger, and then there was a lot of prayers. But Ronnie walked to the back of the plane. Before we were a glider, we were still single, and I kept going to the cockpit and back to my seat over the left wing on the aisle. And Ronnie walked to the back, and I remember thinking, and I've said this before in an interview, it's in my book and it's in the movie. Ronnie walks to the back of the plane, and I thought to myself, good idea. It's better back there. Mm-hmm. Then he came beside me again, and he had a velour pillow from one of our couches, because we had the interior of the plane kind of like set up like a tour bus, and we had all the latest technology. Pong. we had Pong. We said beep, beep. And we had a Sony Trinitron television and a Betamax, and that's what killed Ronnie. All of that stuff coming forward in the crash, centrifugal force and what have you, and physics. And Ronnie was at the front of the plane, and that stuff that wasn't battened down and strapped down went forward. And the doctor told me, when he told me, he came to me and he said, "You want to know who made it and who didn't? Are you ready?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said certain names, and I already knew that. And then he came to Steve Gaines, and that was a surprise. But I knew that Ronnie, because Ronnie told me. And so he said that Ronnie was killed by a single blow to the head, and I knew it had to be stupid Sony Trinitron or a Betamax. Mm-hmm. So, that was the graphics of it. But when he passed me again, he stopped, and we did the old hippie handshake, like I did with you. Mm-hmm. And it was like that moment in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, when they jumped off the cliff, they held hands and went, shit, jumped off. It was that kind of a moment. But Ronnie, I'll never forget, had this beautiful smile on his face. And Ronnie had an incredible handwriting. It almost looked like a woman's cursive. Mm-hmm. He had this beautiful signature. And he had this great smile. And you wanted to see Ronnie smile. You didn't want him to be angry, because Ronnie, it was his band, and he ran it with an iron fist because he had an iron fist. Mm-hmm. And but he gave me this great smile, and then just proceeded back to the front of the plane. And I remember thinking, bad idea, good idea, bad idea. But I didn't question it. And at that point, we were kind of losing everything. And but he was brave. Everybody on that plane, they were all brave. They met their deaths bravely, and we should all do that, because we all live, we all die. It's how you live your life. Mm-hmm. And Ronnie left. The thing I think about a lot of times is Steve Gaines had not yet hit his stride, and that man had many, many songs in him. And Ronnie and Steve had many, many duets left, like that duet, "You Got That Right." Mm-hmm. "When my time comes, you won't find me in an old folks' home." They knew their destiny. And Ronnie told me that in Tokyo, Japan, and it didn't hit me till later that Steve wrote a song called "I'm Not the One in the Sun." And he said the words are, "The sun is shining somewhere for someone, but not for me." He was saying that the sun wouldn't shine for him much longer. And they knew their destiny. And, I don't want to outlive my children. I don't want to do that. I can't imagine losing a child. I don't want to feel that. But long live everyone, you know. But it's right that you are interested in Ronnie's philosophy in life and death, because he was prolific, and his songs relate to everybody. And Freebird and Sweet Home, you know. I used to do a lot of stuff with Carl P. Mayfield.
Yeah, Carl's a great friend.
Right? And we would do stunts. One time they brought in a bunch of snow up on 2nd Avenue, and we had a sled race. I beat him. But he would do that thing with his shotgun.
Bubba Skinner.
Bubba Skinner, man.
Yeah.
Lives down at Freebird Trailer Park.
Oh, yeah, man.
And we did so much cool stuff and raised money for a Dream Ship program for children.
Yeah.
I love doing stunts with Carl P. Mayfield.
Carl's something. I loaned him the Tammy Wynette dress that I have in the museum. I loaned it to him. He wore it.
He wore the Tammy Wynette dress.
Yeah.
His wife used to spend hours doing his makeup.
Yeah.
And giving him a gut and the beard and everything when he was Bubba Skinner. And he had Cleon, the cab driver.
Yeah.
Cleon, and Black Elvis. He did Black Elvis. I mean,
it was hilarious.
Carl P. was he's quite a personality.
Yeah,
he could have been. He was like a Howard Stern.
He was actually one of the very first people I told I was gonna do this, and he actually set me up a meeting with the mayor of Nashville at that time to try to help me out. He's a great guy.
So Carl P. helped you get this started a little bit.
Yeah, he did. He really did. Yeah.
Please tell him that I said hello.
I will do that.
I've been out of touch with him for a while. He wanted to help me start a Sirius program.
Yeah.
Because he's on Sirius, and he wanted to a Southern Rock 101 with Artimus Pyle. And I play a lot of my Southern. Now I'm a jazz freak. I like Weather Report and Herbie Hancock. You know, a lot of the John Coltrane stuff, but I love all music, you know, and give me some Patsy Cline. I love really, you know, country, but Carl P. said that I could play anything I wanted on the program. And so, but tell him I send my best.
I'll definitely
please.
do that.
We had some fun together.
Yeah, I have had fun with him too. Well, man, thank you so much for coming in and doing this. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. And
established 2006.
Yeah.
That's when we were inducted in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You know who with? Black Sabbath, Blondie, the Sex Pistols, and Miles Davis. And I got to hang out with Herbie Hancock.
Yeah.
And after we did Freebird, man, Herbie Hancock goes, well, Artimus, that song Freebird, that's what you can imagine. A jazz cat has never seen us do Freebird. And that night being inducted in the Hall of Fame, Johnny Van Zant's out there, and Ricky Medlock, and Ed King, you know, and Gary, and the whole band that was still with us. You know, Billy, Leon was not with us, but it was a melee. We were playing for all of our might, you know, playing Freebird, and Herbie Hancock was like, That's a wild song, Artimus. You know, I was like, I know.
Yeah, that's the one song that if I'm ever going to get a speeding ticket, that's what's going to be on the radio.
Because you keep getting faster.
I just keep getting faster.
Well, man, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for doing it.
It's great to see you again.
Same here, and be sure to check us out next time on Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage.